Hi there, it's me, Max from Isolation Game, and today we're taking on another Dreams Workshop tutorial. It's about emitters. Let's dive in.
Emitters are all about making something appear from nothing, as if by magic. Looks like Cuthbert hasn't quite got the hang of them yet. You can emit all sorts of things: platforms, scenery, enemies, effects. One of the simplest ways to use an emitter is to launch a projectile, which is exactly what Connie needs to hit this target. Next to Connie, there's a button with a trigger zone gadget on it. We're going to set up an emitter to launch the orange at the target, then use this trigger zone to activate it. Let's start by getting an emitter gadget from the Gadgets menu. Go to the Assembly menu, then select Gadgets with X. Now open the Movers and Outputs menu and look for the emitter. The icon is an arrow and 3 circles. Select the emitter with X, but don't stamp it just yet. We're going to attach the emitter to this fruit launcher using Surface Snap. To Surface Snap gadgets, just hold L1 while holding a gadget. Keep L1 held, then hover over the base of the fruit launcher. The gadget hugs the surface. Press R2 or X to attach the gadget. Once that's done, release L1 and then press the circle button to drop the gadget. It's not essential to surface snap emitters, but it'll come in handy later on. In the next step, we'll give the emitter something to emit.
Quite interesting. In my computer graphics times, particle effects were my strong skill.
To make the emitter work, we'll need to give it a reference object. The emitter will then make a copy of that object that can be emitted in a variety of ways. Hover over the gadget, hold L1, then press square. Move the tweak menu to the side so you can still see the emitter gadget. When the tweak menu is open, a positional gizmo will be visible on the emitter. This is where the object will emit from. So let's give it something to emit. In the tweak menu, look for the button with the crosshair icon. This button is used to pick something in the scene to be the reference object for the emitter. Hover over the button, then press X. The button will start flashing. Now the tip of your imp will be tethered to the button by a dashed line. When you hover over an object that can be emitted, the line will change colour. Note that most of the objects in this scene have been frozen and can't be emitted. Hover over the orange, then press X to connect it to the emitter. This flashing orange is a copy of the one we just linked to the tweak menu. The original is still in the scene, but it's been hidden. I'll show you how to unhide it later. The positional gizmo has moved to the centre of the orange, and an arrow gizmo has appeared. The arrow shows the direction of the emitted object. Grab the arrow gizmo with R2 and move it so that it's pointing at the target. Angle the arrow upwards slightly so that the orange doesn't collide with the edge of the launcher. Use the grab cam, R1, to check the gizmo's position from different angles. Now click R3 to test the emitter. Well, the emitter is working, but it'll need more power if it's going to hit the target. Click L3 to rewind time. I'll show you how to give it some oomph in the next step.
Whoa, I missed something about the target camera. Can you please repeat?
3 to test the emitter. 3 to test the emitter. 3 to angle the arrow and move it so that it appeared. Show you how to unhide it later. The positional gizmo has moved to the center of the orange, and an arrow gizmo has appeared. The arrow shows the direction of the emitted object. Grab the arrow gizmo with R2 and move it so that it's pointing at the target. Angle the arrow upwards slightly so that the orange doesn't collide with the edge of the launcher. Use the grab cam, R1, to check the gizmo's position from different angles.
Yeah, I understand what you meant now.
Now click R3 to test the emitter. Well, the emitter is working, but it'll need more power if it's going to hit the target. Click L3 to rewind time.
It works.
I'll show you how to give it some oomph in the next step. To make the emitted oranges travel farther, we need to increase the emit speed. Find the slider with the speedometer icon. Move the slider with X to adjust the value. If you set the speed to 0, the object will just appear at the positional gizmo. This is useful for spawning enemies or emitting static scenery objects. It's not much use for a projectile though, so bump up the speed to around 10 meters per second. Now click R3 to start time. That's more like it. Use the arrow gizmo to aim the orange at the bullseye. Once it's on target, click L3 to rewind time. Now the emitter is on target, we can finish tweaking it. Find the option called Emit Mode. There's two options here, once and continuous. At the moment, the emitter is continuously emitting oranges at 1 second intervals. The time between the emissions can be changed using this slider. But if we change the emit mode to once, only one orange will be emitted each time the emitter is activated. Click R3 again, and this time only one orange is emitted. Click L3 to rewind time and close the tweak menu. Then start the next step when you're ready.
Dead center.
For Connie to activate the emitter, we need to wire it up to the button. On the side of the trigger zone, there's an output port called Detected. This will activate when Connie enters the zone on the button. Press X over the port to create a wire, then drag the wire over to the emitter. Connect the wire to the power port with R2 or X. Now the launcher will only fire when Connie jumps on the button. Now take a look at the target. See that green gadget on it? That's an impact sensor. If Connie can hit the target with the orange, the impact sensor will detect it and trigger some logic to raise the first bridge. Well, it will once we turn it on. Tweak the impact sensor with L1 and square. At the bottom of the menu, there's a power button. Select it with X to turn it on, then close the tweak menu. Right, let's try this out in play mode. Bullseye! The bridge has raised and Connie can get to the next platform. Come back to edit mode, rewind time with L3 and start the next step.
Well, I must say that I'm fascinated with how visualized all these things are, because my strong thing at school was geometry. While I was good at math, I wasn't the last in the class, but I wasn't the best. But all things that could be visualized were my strongest. And when I see visualized logic here, and that everything is not hidden inside the code or in special parts of the engine, and that everything could be seen and realized by your own eyes, is a magnificent step forward in UI representation of such complex stuff. I'm so happy I'm seeing this working.
Connie must be feeling fruity today. The next target is activated by a watermelon. Instead of setting up another emitter from scratch, let's try cloning the emitter gadget from the first platform. Move your view so you can see the first two platforms. Hold L1 and grab the emitter gadget to clone it. Make sure you only clone the gadget and not the whole launcher. Once you've made the clone, release L1 and move the new emitter over to the second platform. Now hold L1 again to surface snap it to the watermelon's fruit launcher. Then release R2 to place it. Click R3 to test it. The cloned emitter isn't connected to the trigger zone yet, so it activates immediately. And of course it's emitting the wrong object, so some tweaking is in order. Click L3 to rewind time, then open the tweak menu of the cloned emitter. To remove the orange from the emitter, just hover over the Object to Emit tweak and press triangle. This will reset the button. Pressing triangle over any tweak menu slider or button resets it to its default state. Close the tweak menu with L1 and circle. Before we connect the watermelon to the emitter, how about we give it some juice? Start the next step when you're ready to continue. Another great way to use emitters is to emit effects. See that gadget on the watermelon? That's a microchip. It contains some logic. To open the microchip, hover over it, hold L1, then press X. It's just like scoping in. This is a simple logic circuit. If you hover over the output ports and follow the wires, you can see what the logic is doing. When the watermelon bumps into something, that event switches on the destroyer. Then, as soon as the watermelon is destroyed, the emitter is activated. But it isn't set up to emit anything yet. We'll use this emitter to emit a splat effect. There's a ready-made fruit splat effect for you to use in the tutorial collection. Go to the assembly menu, then select the search button. Enter the collection and find the fruit splat effect. Select it with X. Stamp the fruit splat next to the watermelon, then press circle to unequip it. It doesn't look like much at the moment, but if you click R3... Now that's a proper splat. The splat is a simple animated painting. You can learn more about animated paintings by playing the painting tutorial. Look for it in the art tutorials. Now click L3 to rewind time. In the next step, I'll show you how to emit the splat effect. To emit the splat from the watermelon, we need to tweak the emitter in the microchip. Select the Object to Emit button with X. Drag the dashed line over to the splat, then connect it with X. The splat should come from the middle of the watermelon, so use the positional gizmo to position the emitter. Use the grab cam to check the position of the gizmo from different angles. The effect already has animation, so the emit speed should be set to 0. And as this is a one-time effect, set the emit mode to once. And that should do it. Close any tweak menus and microchips with L1 and circle. The watermelon is now ready to be emitted from the launcher. Because the microchip is attached to the watermelon, it'll also be copied by the emitter, along with all the logic inside. See if you can connect the watermelon to the emitter. It's just like the way we connected the orange on the first platform. And don't forget to connect the trigger zone so that Connie can activate it. If you get stuck or need help setting up the emitter, just move on to the next step and we'll go through it together.
Too much. Almost. Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah, bullseye. Almost bullseye, I guess. A little bit higher. We need to go a little bit higher. And a little bit to the right. Just a little bit. Great. Love it. I'm happy like a child. I don't know why.
So let's connect our juicy fruit to the launcher's emitter. If you manage to do it yourself, then you can skip to the next step. Hover over the emitter gadget, then hold L1 and press square to open its tweak menu. Select the Object to Emit button with X, then stretch the dashed line over to the watermelon. Press X over it to link it to the emitter. This target is a bit farther than the first one, so adjust the emit speed and the trajectory of the emitter so the watermelon can reach it. "15 meters per second should do it. You could also put some spin on the emitted watermelons by adjusting the rotation speed slider.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Click R3 to test it. When you're aiming an emitter, it can be useful to switch the emit mode to continuous. Once you've got it lined up with the target, rewind time and switch the emit mode back to once. Close the tweak menu, then connect the trigger zone to the emitter on the melon launcher. When everything is hooked up, switch to play mode to test it out with Connie.
What's wrong?
The splat effect looks brilliant, but for some reason the target isn't activating when the watermelon hits it. Go back to edit mode and rewind time with L3. We'll investigate this in the next step.
No, still a little bit too much. With this rotation, the velocity changes. Ah, so it's connected already. Ah, that's why it's not working. Almost. I'll change it later.
Any ideas why the watermelon wasn't triggering the target? Take a closer look at the target. See that gadget snapped to it? From its icon, we can tell it's a trigger zone. Ah, but if we hover over it, we can see that it's been named Detect Tag. If you open its tweak menu, you'll see that in the Things to Detect section, the Tag button is selected. Naming gadgets and logic really helps fellow Dreamshapers understand what's going on in your scene. Close the tweak menu with L1 and circle. Tags are really simple gadgets that you can use to trigger logic. If we add one to the watermelon, it should activate the target. Only problem is, the original watermelon vanished when we connected it to the emitter. Even if we open the tweak menu, we can't tweak or scope into the watermelon because this is the emitter's copy, not the original object. But there's a way to get around this without unlinking the watermelon from the emitter. Go to the assembly menu, then select Show Hide. This menu has a bunch of options for showing or hiding various different things in the scene. In Show Hide, look for the closed eye icon. This button is Preview Invisibility, and by default, it's switched on. If you deselect it with X, all the invisible objects in the scene will become visible, and you'll also be able to interact with them. If you still have the emitter tweak menu open, you'll be able to see the original watermelon and the copy. Grab the watermelon and move it to one side, and you'll be able to see them both. The flashing watermelon with the arrow gizmo is the emitter copy. The watermelon connected by the red dashed line is the original. Close the emitter tweak menu, and the copy will disappear into the gadget. This original reference object is the one we need to edit. We'll do that in the next step.
Why don't I see the other watermelon? but I guess that's not important.
In the last step, we turned off preview invisibility in the scene. Oh wow, look at Connie. With preview invisibility turned off, we can see all her special effects. Don't get distracted by all that though. We've got work to do. Now that the original watermelon is visible again, we can tweak and edit it. Use L1 and X to open the microchip on the watermelon. Because this microchip is surface snapped to the watermelon, it will also be copied by the emitter. By adding a tag to the microchip, the emitted watermelons will be able to activate the target. Go to the assembly menu and select Gadgets. In Sensors and Input, look for the tag. Once you've equipped the tag, hover over the microchip and it will automatically snap to the canvas. Press R2 or X to stamp a tag anywhere on the microchip canvas. Now press Circle to unequip the tag, then hold L1 and press Circle to close the microchip. We can turn preview invisibility back on now. Go back to the Show Hide menu and select the closed eye icon. Now give it a try in play mode. It worked!
It works. A miracle.
Go back to edit mode and rewind time with L3. One more obstacle to go. We'll tackle that in the next step.
Sure we are.
We've made it to the final challenge. The final bridge is already raised, but there's a huge block in the way. If you look closer at the block, you'll see another microchip gadget attached to it. Open it up with L1 and X. Ah, this logic looks similar to what we saw in the watermelon's microchip. We have an impact sensor connected to a destroyer that triggers an emitter. If we fire one of our fruit launchers at the block, it'll clear the way for Connie. But first, let's add an awesome destruction effect to the block using the emitter. When the block is destroyed, we'll emit the broken version of the block so it splits into lots of pieces. Go to the assembly menu, then select Search to open the tutorial collection. Find the element named Broken Block and select it with X. Stamp the broken block next to the unbroken one. We just need to connect the broken block to the Object to Emit tweak. Open the Tweak menu of the emitter in the microchip. Select Objects to Emit with X, then stretch the dashed line over to the broken block. Press X to connect the broken block to the emitter. In the final step, we'll tweak the emitter to finish the effect.
I was always curious, how are they doing destruction games? Well, I knew that it's done this way, the way it's described right now, but being able to make it myself, it's like a revelation.
To make the destruction effect look convincing, we need to line up the blocks exactly. To get it exact, we'll enable the Grid Snap guide. Go to the assembly menu and select Guides. Select the grid icon to enable Grid Snap. Now grab the positional gizmo of the emitter and line it up with the block. If you can see 2 broken blocks, it means you still have preview invisibility turned off. It doesn't matter if you do, as invisible objects can't be seen in play mode. Line up the emitted broken block as closely as you can to the one on the bridge. Press triangle while grabbing the block to realign it to the grid. All that's left to do is blast the block with a fruit launcher. Fly back over to the second platform and select the button and the launcher. Hold L1 and then grab them to create clones. Because all the gadgets are surface snapped, we can clone the logic, the watermelon and the splat effect all in one go. Move the clones over to the final platform and position them so the watermelon will be fired at the block. The scene is ready to go. Click L3 to rewind and make sure all the buttons are connected.
No.
And try out the ready to go and position and the splat on and then
Something
grab
is
them
wrong.
to create. All that's left to do is blast the block with a fruit launcher.
So I select.
Fly back over to the second platform and select the button and the launcher. Hold L1 and then grab them to create clones. Because all the gadgets are surface snapped, we can clone the logic, the watermelon and the splat effect all in one go. Move the clones over to the final platform and position them so the watermelon will be fired at the block. The scene is ready to go. Click L3 to rewind and make sure all the buttons are connected up to the emitter gadgets. Then head into play mode and try out the completed scene.
Amazing. Oh, Curvebird. You're so cute.
Take Connie into the elevator to complete the tutorial.
Thanks. See you in the multiverse. Bye bye and thanks for watching. Don't forget to be a dreamer.